The wind cut through the canyon like a blade made of ice, carrying with it the kind of cold that didn't just chill, it murdered. Garrett Harlan had been riding for days straight, his horse laboring through snow that came up past its knees, when he saw something that made him pull hard on the reins. A splash of color against the white, dark fabric, the curve of a shoulder, a body. He sat there for a long moment, steam rising from his horse's nostrils, considering his options. The smart thing would have been to keep riding. Dead travelers were common enough in these mountains during winter, and stopping for them was a good way to join them in the ground. His supplies were already stretched thin. The cabin was still some time away, and the light was fading fast. But then the body moved, just barely. A twitch of fingers, a shallow rise and fall of breath. Not dead. Not yet. "Damn it," Garrett muttered, swinging down from the saddle. He approached carefully, one hand on the revolver at his hip. Robbery wasn't unheard of out here. Desperate people playing dead to lure in the foolish. But as he got closer, he could see this wasn't a trap. This was someone who had run out of time. It was a woman, half buried in a snowdrift, her face the color of old parchment. She wore a traveling dress that had once been fine. He could tell by the stitching, the quality of the fabric, but it was torn now, shredded in places, stained with mud, and what looked like blood. No coat, no gloves. Her dark hair was matted with ice. She shouldn't have been alive. By all rights, she should have been frozen solid hours ago. Garrett knelt beside her, pulling off his glove to press 2 fingers against her throat. The pulse was there, faint and irregular, but present. Her lips were blue, her skin like touching marble. "Can you hear me?" he asked, though he didn't expect an answer. Her eyelids fluttered. Beneath them, he caught a glimpse of green, pale and unfocused, but aware. She was trying to speak, her cracked lips forming words that had no sound. He made his decision in that moment, knowing it was probably stupid, definitely dangerous, and completely unavoidable. He couldn't leave her here, whatever that said about him. Soft, reckless, a fool. He'd have to live with it. Garrett worked quickly, wrapping her in his own coat before lifting her into his arms. She weighed almost nothing, all bone and ice. He secured her across his saddle as gently as he could, then climbed up behind her, holding her against his chest, to share what little warmth he had left. The ride back to the cabin was the longest of his life. She didn't wake, didn't stir. He kept checking to make sure she was still breathing, one hand pressed against her ribs to feel the shallow movement of her lungs. The temperature was dropping fast, the kind of cold that turned breath into crystals and made exposed skin split like old leather. By the time the cabin came into view, a dark shape hunched against the mountainside. His arms were shaking from holding her, and he'd lost feeling in his feet. He half fell from the horse, staggering under her weight as he kicked the door open. The cabin was barely warmer than outside. The fire had died hours ago, leaving nothing but cold ash in the hearth. Garrett laid her on his bed, the only bed, and went to work with the practiced efficiency of a man who had survived too many winters to waste time on panic. Fire first. He built it fast, cramming the hearth with kindling and dry wood until flames roared up the chimney. Heat began to fill the small space, pushing back the lethal chill. Then he turned his attention to the woman. Her clothes were soaked through, frozen in places. He'd have to get them off her or risk pneumonia, assuming she didn't already have it. Garrett hesitated, his hands hovering over the buttons of her dress. This felt wrong, invasive, but there was no other choice. Modesty was a luxury neither of them could afford right now. He worked quickly, keeping his eyes on his hands, nothing else. The dress came off in pieces, revealing layers of fine undergarments, all of them ruined. Beneath it all, Her skin was a map of bruises, dark purple marks along her ribs, yellowing contusions on her arms, a nasty scrape across her shoulder that looked infected. Someone had hurt her. Recently, Garrett felt something cold settle in his gut, something that wasn't the winter wind. He'd seen marks like these before, on women who had run from bad situations, but usually those women were running from miners, drifters, rough men in rough camps. This woman's clothes, even torn and ruined, spoke of money. Real money. The kind that bought protection, influence, safety. What the hell had happened to her? He wrapped her in every blanket he owned, piling them high until only her face showed. Her breathing was still shallow, her color still terrible, but at least she wasn't getting colder. That was something. Garrett hung her wet clothes by the fire, then set about making broth from the dried meat in his stores. It wasn't much. He hadn't been expecting company, but it was hot, and it was food. If she woke up, she'd need both. The storm picked up outside, wind howling through the gaps in the cabin walls, rattling the shutters. He was stuck here now, at least until morning. Stuck with an unconscious stranger who might die before sunrise, who might bring trouble he couldn't handle, who might be running from something worse than the cold. He should have kept riding, but he hadn't. And now here they were. Garrett pulled a chair up beside the bed and settled in to wait. The fire crackled, the wind screamed, and somewhere in the darkness outside, in that frozen wasteland he'd pulled her from, something she'd been running from might still be looking. She didn't wake that night. Garrett dozed in the chair, jerking awake every hour to check her pulse, to make sure she was still breathing, to feed the fire. Sometime around dawn, her color improved. Still pale, but no longer the blue-white of a corpse. Her breathing deepened, became more regular. He allowed himself to hope she might live. When morning finally came, weak and gray through the shuttered windows, the storm had passed. The world outside was buried under fresh snow, pristine and deadly. No tracks, no trails, no way to know where she'd come from or how she'd ended up dying in a drift. Garrett stood, stretching muscles that had gone stiff from the long night, and went to check his supplies. The arithmetic was simple and brutal. One person, he had enough food for several weeks, maybe more if he was careful. Two people cut that in half, maybe less if she needed to recover strength. And that assumed the weather held, that he could hunt, that nothing else went wrong. He was calculating how to ration the flour when he heard it, a soft sound from the bed. A breath that caught, held, released as something closer to a gasp. She was waking up. Garrett moved to her side, keeping his distance, his posture non-threatening. Her eyes opened slowly, unfocused at first, then sharpening as they found his face. Green eyes he saw now, the color of new leaves striking against her pale skin. For a moment, they just looked at each other. Then panic flashed across her features, and she tried to sit up, hands scrambling for blankets that weren't there. "Easy," Garrett said, holding up both hands. "You're safe. You were freezing to death. I brought you here." She stared at him, breathing hard, eyes darting around the cabin, taking in the rough walls, the simple furnishings, the isolation, looking for exits, looking for weapons. "Where are my clothes?" Her voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper, but there was something in it. An accent, maybe, something that suggested education, refinement, a world far removed from this frontier cabin. Drying by the fire. They were wet. You would have died. She pulled the blankets tighter around herself, and he saw her wince. Those bruises were painful. "Who are you?" "Garrett Harlan. This is my cabin. You want to tell me your name?" A pause. Too long. When she finally answered, he knew it was a lie. Ava Ward. All right, Ava Ward. He kept his voice neutral, unthreatening. You want to tell me how you ended up half frozen in the middle of nowhere? She looked away toward the fire. I was traveling. There was an accident. The wagon overturned. I was thrown clear, but the driver, I think he died. I tried to walk, to find help, but I got turned around in the storm. It was a decent lie, well constructed, believable enough. But it was still a lie. The bruises on her ribs weren't from a wagon accident. The terror in her eyes wasn't from being lost. Garrett decided not to push. Not yet. You're lucky to be alive, he said instead. Another hour in that cold, and you wouldn't have been. Thank you. She met his eyes again, and he saw something shift in her expression. Calculation, perhaps. Trying to figure out what kind of man he was, whether he posed a threat. Thank you for saving me. He nodded, then stood. I'll get you some broth. You need to eat. She watched him move around the cabin, her eyes tracking his every movement. He could feel her fear like a physical presence in the room, mixed with something else. Determination, maybe. The will to survive. Whoever she was, whatever she was running from, she wasn't broken. Hurt, yes. Scared, absolutely. But not broken. Garrett ladled broth into a tin cup and brought it to her. She took it with trembling hands, sipped carefully. He saw her face change as the warmth hit her. Surprise, then something like relief. It's good, she said. It's hot. That's all that matters. She drank slowly, and he watched color return to her cheeks. After a few minutes, she lowered the cup and looked at him directly. How long was I out there? Can't say for sure. I found you yesterday afternoon. You've been unconscious since then. Her hands tightened on the cup. I need to leave, she said suddenly. As soon as possible. I need to get to... She stopped herself. I need to move on. In case you haven't noticed, there's deep, fresh snow out there. You're not going anywhere for at least a few days. You don't understand. Then make me understand. He pulled the chair closer, sat down. Who's following you, Ava Ward? She went very still. No one. Those bruises on your ribs say different. So does the way you're looking at that door, like you expect someone to kick it in any second. For a long moment, she didn't speak. Then quietly, it's better if you don't know. I pulled you out of a snowdrift. I burned through half my winter wood keeping you alive. I think I've earned at least part of the truth. She looked at him, really looked at him, and he could see her weighing options. Trust was a currency in these mountains, rare and valuable. He'd given her some already. He could have left her to die, could have done worse than that. Now she had to decide if she'd give any back. There was a man, she said finally, a powerful man. He wanted something from me that I wouldn't give. When I refused, She stopped, swallowed hard. I ran. That's all you need to know. Is he still looking for you? Yes. Will he find you here? I don't know. Maybe. Eventually. She set the cup aside. Which is why I need to leave as soon as possible. I won't bring my problems to your door. Too late for that. Garrett stood, moved to the window, looked out at the endless white. But you're not going anywhere in this. Even if you could walk, which I doubt, you'd be dead in an hour. So you're stuck with me until the weather breaks. I have money, she said suddenly. Not with me, but I can get it. I can pay you to help me. He turned to look at her. Keep your money. I don't need it. Everyone needs money. Not enough to take it from someone running for their life. He returned to the chair. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to rest and heal. When you're strong enough, and when the weather allows it, I'll take you to the nearest town. From there, you're on your own. That work for you? She studied his face, searching for the catch, the angle, the hidden price. He let her look. What she'd find was simple enough. A man who'd made a choice and would see it through. Nothing more complicated than that. Finally, she nodded. That works. Good. Now finish that broth and get some sleep. You look like hell. Look. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. You certainly know how to flatter a lady. I'm not trying to flatter you. I'm trying to keep you alive. The smile faded. Yes. Well, thank you for that. He stood to leave her in peace, but her voice stopped him. Garrett. He turned back. Why did you stop? Most men would have kept writing. It was a good question. One he'd been asking himself since the moment he'd seen that splash of color against the snow. Don't know, he said honestly. Seemed like the thing to do at the time. That's not much of an answer. It's the only one I've got. He left her then, stepping outside into the brutal cold to tend to his horse and check the wood supply. The animal was in the small shelter he'd built against the cabin's north wall, stamping and snorting in the cold. Garrett gave it grain and water, checked its legs for ice damage. Just you and me now, boy, he murmured, running a hand down the horse's neck. And one very expensive problem inside, because that's what she was. He knew. Expensive. Not in money, but in the kind of trouble that came with fancy dresses and bruises that looked like fingerprints. The kind of trouble that didn't stop looking just because the trail went cold. He should have kept riding, but he hadn't. And some part of him, the part that had stopped in the first place, knew he'd do it again, would make the same choice, would pull her from that snow, even knowing what it might cost. Some things you did because they were right, not because they were smart. His father would have called him a fool. His father who died broke and bitter, who taught him that sentiment was a luxury poor men couldn't afford. Maybe the old man had been right about that. Maybe Garrett was a fool, but at least she was alive. He gathered an armload of wood and headed back inside. Ava, if that was really her name, had fallen asleep again, the cup empty beside her. She looked younger in sleep, less guarded. There were freckles across her nose he hadn't noticed before, barely visible against her pale skin. Garrett built up the fire and settled into his chair. Outside, clouds were gathering again. More snow coming, probably by evening. They'd be stuck here for days, maybe longer. Two strangers in a cabin barely big enough for one, with secrets between them and trouble somewhere behind. He should have kept riding, but he'd deal with what came. He always did. The next few days passed in an uneasy rhythm. Ava slept most of the first day, waking only to eat the broth and bread Garrett brought her. By the second day, she was stronger, able to sit up without wincing, to move around the cabin in the spare clothes he'd found for her. An old shirt of his, too large, and wool pants he'd rolled up at the ankles. Not refined, not elegant, but warm and dry. She didn't talk much at first, kept to herself, watching him with those calculating green eyes. But slowly, carefully, conversation began to happen. Small things at first, comments about the weather, questions about the cabin, how long he'd been here, whether he lived alone. He answered honestly. Sometime, yes, mostly by choice. Asked his own questions in return, gentle probes that she deflected with the skill of someone used to guarding information. But some things she couldn't hide. The way she held a knife when cutting bread, delicate, precise. The grip of someone who'd been taught proper table manners. The way she organized the small stack of books on his shelf, arranging them by size and subject with automatic efficiency. The way she spoke, even trying to sound casual, word choices that suggested education far beyond what a simple traveler would have. And then there were the nightmares. They started the third night. Garrett woke to the sound of her crying out, words he couldn't make out, terror thick in her voice. He'd gone to her, shaken her awake as gently as he could. She'd come up gasping, eyes wild, not seeing him at first. "You're safe," he'd told her. "It was just a dream." "You're safe." She'd looked at him then, really looked at him, and something had broken in her expression. For just a moment, he'd seen past all her careful walls to the fear beneath. "I'm sorry," she'd whispered. "I'm so sorry." "Nothing to be sorry for. You don't know that. You don't know what I've—" She'd stopped herself, pulled back. "Never mind. Go back to sleep." But he'd seen it, that crack in her armor, and it told him more than any of her careful lies ever could. By the fourth day, she was well enough to help around the cabin. She insisted on it actually despite his protests. Said she needed to do something, couldn't just sit idle while he waited on her. So he let her help with small tasks, preparing food, mending a tear in one of his shirts, organizing his meager supplies. She was good at it, too good. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, the kind that came from running a household. A large household, probably, with staff. "You grew up with money," he said one afternoon, watching her fold blankets with neat, precise corners. She paused just for a moment. "What makes you say that?" "The way you do everything. Like you were taught. Like it matters. Maybe I just like things organized. Maybe." He leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "Or maybe you're used to having people around who'd notice if things weren't done right." She met his eyes. "You're very observant. I'm a trapper. Observation keeps you alive out here. Is that what you do? Trap? Among other things. Hunt. Guide sometimes when travelers need help crossing these mountains. Take odd work when I head into town. Sounds lonely." "It is." He said it simply, without apology. "That's why I like it." She studied him for a long moment. "Why? What are you hiding from?" The question caught him off guard. He'd been so focused on her secrets he'd forgotten everyone had them. "Nothing," he said. "Just prefer my own company to most people's. Most people aren't very good company." No, they're not. Something shifted in the air between them. A recognition, maybe. An understanding that they were both people who'd chosen distance for different reasons. "Can I ask you something?" Ava set down the blanket she'd been folding. "Why haven't you turned me in?" "Turned you into who?" "To whoever's offering a reward. There must be one. There's always a reward for missing people or to people like me." "People like you," he repeated. "Rich people, you mean? Important people." She didn't deny it. "I haven't turned you in because I don't care about your reward," Garrett said. "And because whatever you're running from, you're running for a good reason. You don't know that." "Yes, I do. I've seen those bruises. I've heard you scream in your sleep. Whatever happened to you, whoever did that, they don't deserve to find you." Her eyes went bright, suspiciously bright. She blinked hard. That's very kind of you." "It's not kind. It's decent. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Kindness is optional. Decency is it's just what you do or what you're supposed to do anyway." She was quiet for a moment, then, "Most men wouldn't see it that way." "Well, I'm not most men." "No," she said softly. "No, you're not." That night, she cooked dinner. He tried to stop her, said she should still be resting, but she waved him off, insisted. So, he sat and watched her work with his limited supplies, turning dried meat and old vegetables into something that actually tasted good. "Where'd you learn to cook?" he asked. From someone who knew what they were doing. She stirred the pot, tasted, added salt. "You pick things up when you pay attention." You pay attention a lot, don't you? It's kept me alive so far. They ate in comfortable silence, the wind howling outside. The cabin felt smaller with 2 people in it, but not in a bad way. Just different, less empty. After dinner, she cleared the dishes without being asked. Garrett watched her move around the small space with growing familiarity, like she was learning its rhythms. Learning him, maybe. "Can I ask you something now?" he said. She tensed slightly. "You can ask?" "Your name?" "Ava Ward. That's not real, is it?" A long pause, then, "No." "You going to tell me your real name? Would it change anything if I did?" "Probably not." "Then does it matter?" He considered that. "I guess not, but I'd still like to know." She turned to face him, drying her hands on a cloth. In the firelight, her features were softer, less guarded. She looked tired, not physically, but in a deeper way. The kind of tired that came from carrying too much for too long. "If I tell you," she said quietly, "you'll be in more danger than you already are. Just knowing my real name makes you a liability, makes you someone they'd have to silence." "They?" "The people looking for me." "I see." He stood, moved to the fire. "Dadobuare." Added another log. "And what if I don't care about the danger? You should. These aren't the kind of people you cross and walk away from. Seems to me you cross them and you're still walking." "Am I?" She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I'm hiding in a cabin in the middle of nowhere, wearing someone else's clothes, jumping at every sound. That's not walking. That's surviving. Barely. Surviving is still living. Is it?" She moved closer to the fire, holding her hands out to the warmth. "Sometimes I'm not sure there's much difference between this and being dead." "There's a difference," Garrett said firmly. "Dead is permanent. This is just temporary. You don't know that. Neither do you." She looked at him then, really looked at him, and he saw something shift in her expression, a decision being made. "My name is Ava," she said. That part was true, but not Ward. It's Ava Fairfield." The name hit him like a physical blow. He'd heard it before. Everyone had. The Fairfield family was one of the wealthiest in the country, with railroad interests, mining operations, political connections that reached all the way to Washington. They owned half the territory, some said. Maybe more. "Jesus," he breathed. "Yeah." She wrapped her arms around herself. "So, now you know. You're that Ava Fairfield, the one who disappeared some time ago. The newspapers said I ran off with a lover, that I was mentally unstable, that I'd abandoned my responsibilities." Her voice was bitter. "All lies. Convenient lies, told by convenient people to cover convenient truths." "What's the real truth?" She was quiet for so long, he thought she wouldn't answer. "Then my uncle, Victor Fairfield, he controls the family business now since my father died. And he's decided the most profitable use of me is as a marriage contract to cement a political alliance. When I refused, when I told him I wouldn't marry a man I'd never met just to make him richer, he made it clear that my consent wasn't actually required." The bruises, the fear, it all made horrible sense now. "So you ran," Garrett said. "So I ran, took what I could carry, and disappeared. I've been moving ever since, staying ahead of the men he sent after me. But they're good at their job. They keep finding me, and every time I have to run again." "The wagon accident? That was them?" "Yes. They caught up to me some time before you found me. There was a fight. I got away, but barely. Lost everything in the process. My money, my supplies, my horse. I was trying to reach the next town when the storm hit." Garrett felt something cold and hard settle in his chest. Are they still looking? They'll never stop looking. Victor can't afford to have me out there, free. I know too much about his business dealings, his political manipulations. And as long as I'm alive and missing, I'm a threat to everything he's built. So he wants you dead? No. She met his eyes. He wants me compliant. Dead is his second choice, but not his first. A properly married, properly controlled Ava Fairfield is more valuable to him than a dead one. That's monstrous? Yes. She turned back to the fire. Welcome to my world. Garrett stood there, processing this new information, recalculating every assumption he'd made. The woman in his cabin wasn't just some society lady running from a bad situation. She was a Fairfield. One of the most powerful families in America was hunting her, and he'd put himself directly in their path. You should have told me, he said. Would it have changed anything? I don't know, maybe. That's why I didn't tell you. She looked at him over her shoulder. Because maybe you would have made a different choice, and I needed someone to choose me without knowing what it would cost them. That's not fair. No, it's not. But fairness is another luxury I can't afford. He should be angry, he knew. Should feel manipulated, used. But looking at her standing there in his oversized clothes, with her too careful posture and her too bright eyes, all he felt was a deep, aching sadness. What's your plan? He asked. After you leave here, where will you go? I don't know yet. Somewhere they won't think to look. Somewhere I can disappear completely. That's not a plan. That's just more running. It's all I have. It's not enough. She turned to face him fully. Then what do you suggest? Should I march back to Victor and beg for mercy? Should I let him sell me off to his political allies like a piece of property? Should I just give up? No. But you can't run forever either. Eventually, you'll make a mistake. They'll catch you, and then, I know. Her voice broke slightly. I know, but what choice do I have? I can't fight them. I don't have money, connections, power. All I have is distance and time, and both are running out. Garrett moved closer, drawn by something he couldn't name. You have more than that. Do I? You have me. The words hung in the air between them, heavier than he'd intended. She stared at him, eyes wide. You don't mean that, she said. Yes, I do. You don't know what you're saying. These people, they'll destroy you, your life, your home, everything, just for helping me. Let them try. Garrett, I made a choice when I pulled you out of that snow, he said, and I'm making another one now. You don't have to face this alone. Why? She shook her head, confused, almost angry. Why would you do this? You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. No, but that doesn't change what's right. Right? She laughed, sharp and pained. There's no right in this. There's just survival, and helping me won't help you survive. It'll do the opposite. Maybe, but some things matter more than survival. She opened her mouth to argue, then stopped. Looked at him like she was seeing something new, something unexpected. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. You're insane, she whispered. Probably. You'll regret this. Maybe. I can't let you. You're not letting me do anything. I'm choosing this. Freely. With full knowledge of what it might cost. He took a step closer. You've been running alone for some time. Let someone stand with you for once. A tear slipped down her cheek. She wiped it away angrily. I don't understand you. You don't have to. This is stupid, reckless. Yep. We'll probably both end up dead. Not if I can help it. She made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. You're really serious about this. As serious as I get. For a long moment she just looked at him, searching his face for the lie, the angle, the betrayal that must be coming. He let her look, let her see that he meant every word. Finally, she nodded. Just once, small and sharp. "Okay," she said quietly. "Okay. Okay." They stood there in the firelight, two people who'd found each other in the worst possible circumstances, making the worst possible decisions. And somewhere outside in the dark and the cold, the future waited with whatever it would bring. But for now, in this moment, they weren't alone. And that would have to be enough. The storm that had trapped them together finally broke sometime later, leaving behind a world transformed into something crystalline and merciless. Garrett stood at the window, watching the sun rise over the mountains, turning snow to fire, and felt the weight of his promise settle deeper into his bones. Behind him, Ava was awake. He could hear the soft rustle of blankets, the careful quiet of someone trying not to disturb. She'd been doing that a lot lately, moving through his space like she was afraid to take up too much of it, like she still expected him to change his mind and throw her back into the cold. "Coffee's ready," he said without turning around. "Thank you." He poured 2 cups, handed her one. Their fingers brushed in the exchange, brief and accidental, and he saw her pull back slightly. Still skittish, still waiting for the other shoe to drop. "We need to talk about what comes next," he said. She wrapped both hands around the cup, using it as something to hold on to. "I know. The weather's clear enough now that someone could get through. If Victor's men are still looking, if they tracked you this far, they won't stop looking," she interrupted. "Ever. That's what you need to understand. This isn't something that ends because time passes or trails go cold. Victor doesn't accept defeat. He just gets more creative about winning." Garrett moved to the table, sat down. "Then we need to be more creative than him. We?" She looked at him over the rim of her cup. "You're still serious about this. I don't say things I don't mean. Most people do. I'm not most people." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "No. You've made that abundantly clear." She sat down across from him, setting the cup aside. "All right. Let's say you really mean to help me. What exactly do you think you can do that I haven't already tried?" "I don't know yet. That's what we're going to figure out." Very reassuring. "I'm not trying to reassure you. I'm trying to keep you alive." He leaned forward. "Tell me about Victor. Everything. His resources, his methods, how he thinks." She was quiet for a moment, gathering her thoughts. When she spoke, her voice was steady, clinical even, like she was discussing a business problem instead of the man who'd turned her life into a nightmare. "Victor Fairfield is in his 50s, brilliantly intelligent, and completely without conscience. He took control of the family business when my father died some time ago. I was young then, too young to inherit, too naive to see what he was doing. By the time I understood, he'd consolidated everything. The company, the board, the political connections, all of it. And you? I was useful, the sympathetic face of the Fairfield empire, the pretty niece who attended charity functions and smiled for photographs. He let me think I had influence, that my opinions mattered, but I was just another asset to be managed." Garrett heard the bitterness in her voice, carefully controlled, but present. "When did that change?" "When I got older, old enough to legally challenge his control, old enough to ask uncomfortable questions about where the money was really going, what deals he was really making." She picked up her cup again, took a slow sip. "He didn't like that. Suggested I focus on more appropriate concerns. Marriage, for instance. Children. The social duties of a Fairfield woman. And when you refused, he became insistent, then demanding, then threatening." Her jaw tightened. "The man he wanted me to marry is a senator, wealthy, connected, and completely in Victor's pocket. The marriage would have cemented a political alliance that would make Victor one of the most powerful men in the country. Untouchable, really. But you said no. I said no. She set the cup down with a sharp click. So he tried a different approach, locked me in the family estate, told everyone I was ill, brought in doctors who diagnosed whatever he paid them to diagnose. He was going to have me declared mentally incompetent, sign over my inheritance, marry me off before I even knew what was happening. How did you get out? The housekeeper, Mrs. Heiress. She'd worked for my father, remembered when things were different. She helped me escape one night when Victor was in the city, gave me money, clothes, a head start. I've been running ever since. Garrett absorbed this, fitting pieces together. The men chasing you, they're not just hired muscle, are they? No. Victor uses Pinkertons mostly, professional, relentless, and completely loyal to whoever pays them. But he also has connections to less savory elements, men who will do what the Pinkertons won't. Like what happened some time before I found you. Her face went pale. Yes. Tell me. Do you really want to know? Yes. She took a breath, let it out slowly. I was staying in a boarding house 3 towns over. Thought I'd been careful, covered my tracks. But they found me anyway. Came in the middle of the night, several men. I managed to get out through a window, stole a horse from the stable. They chased me for hours. When they finally caught up, she stopped, swallowed hard. They weren't gentle about trying to convince me to come back. Garrett felt rage settle cold and hard in his chest. They hurt you. They were going to do worse, but a wagon came around the bend, interrupted them. I got away in the confusion, but lost the horse, lost everything I had. By the time the storm hit, I was on foot with nothing but the clothes on my back. And that's when I found you. That's when you found me. She met his eyes. Now you know. So I'll ask you again. What exactly do you think you can do against that kind of power? I don't know, he admitted. But I know hiding forever isn't sustainable. Eventually something will slip. Someone will talk. They'll get lucky. So we need a different strategy. Such as? We remove their reason for hunting you. She laughed, sharp and humorless. How? As long as I'm alive and free, I'm a threat to Victor. There's no removing that. Maybe. Or maybe we make you more dangerous free than caught. I don't follow. Garrett stood, moved to the window, thinking. Victor's hunting you because you know things, because you could expose him. But right now, that knowledge is just a threat. Unused leverage. What if we change that? You mean? What if you start talking? What if instead of hiding what you know, you make it public? She was shaking her head before he finished. That won't work. He controls too many newspapers, too many politicians. Anything I say will be dismissed as the ravings of a mentally ill woman. He's already laid that groundwork. Not if you have proof. I don't have proof. Everything's back at the estate, locked away in his office, his safe. I can't get to it. Then we get it. She stared at him. Are you insane? The estate is guarded, locked down. Even if we could somehow get inside, which we can't, there's no way we'd get out alive. I didn't say it would be easy. Easy? It's impossible. So was surviving in that snow. So was getting away from several Pinkertons. You've done impossible things before. That was luck. Maybe. But luck runs both ways. He turned to face her. Look, I'm not saying I have all the answers, but staying here isn't one and running indefinitely isn't one. So what's left? She was quiet for a long time, her fingers tracing the rim of her cup. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. You're talking about fighting back. Yes, against one of the most powerful men in America. Yes, using resources we don't have, leverage we can't access, and a plan that doesn't exist yet. That's about the size of it. She looked up at him, and he saw something shift in her expression. Fear, yes, but also something else, something that looked almost like hope. "This is crazy," she said. "Probably. We'll most likely fail." "Maybe. And if we do, Victor won't just kill us. He'll make an example of us." "I'm aware." "So why would you even suggest this?" Garrett moved back to the table, sat down across from her. "Because running didn't work for you. Because hiding didn't work. Because everything you've tried so far has just delayed the inevitable. So, maybe it's time to try something different. Something suicidal, you mean. Something that gives you a chance at actually being free, not just surviving, but living." He held her gaze. "Isn't that worth the risk?" She was silent, her face a mask of conflicting emotions. Finally, she spoke. "There's something you should know about the proof you mentioned." "What about it?" "There might be a way to get it. Not from the estate. That really is impossible. But Victor keeps records. Detailed records of every transaction, every deal, every dirty secret. He's paranoid about leverage, about maintaining control. So, he documents everything." "Where?" "His private office in New York. It's where he conducts his real business, away from the company headquarters." She leaned forward. "But it's also where he keeps his insurance, files on everyone he's ever dealt with, including himself. Evidence of bribes, fraud, intimidation. Worse. If we could get access to those files, we'd have everything we need." "In theory, yes. In practice, it's still impossible. The building is secure. The office is locked, and Victor has guards. But it's not the estate. It's not an armed fortress." "No, but it might as well be." Garrett thought about this, turning it over in his mind. "When does Victor travel?" "What?" "You said he goes to the city sometimes. When? How often?" She frowned, thinking. "He splits his time between the estate and New York. Usually spends some time at the estate handling family business, then some time in the city for political meetings, social events. Why? Because if he's not there, if the office is empty, it's never empty. He always has someone watching it. And even if we could get past the guards, the lock on his office is custom made. German steel combination lock. Impossible to pick." "Do you know the combination?" "No, he never trusted me with that. But you've been in the office. A few times, yes, some time ago, before things went bad. So, you know the layout? Where things are kept?" "I suppose, but that's more than we had a minute ago." Garrett stood, started pacing. His mind was working now, fitting pieces together, looking for the angle. "We need more information. Guard schedules, building security, how to get in and out without being seen. And where exactly do you propose we get that information?" "The same place everyone gets information. We buy it." She laughed, genuinely amused now. "With what money? I'm a fugitive with nothing to my name, and you're—" She stopped, caught herself. "A trapper," he finished. "Poor, I know, but I've got enough saved to make it worth someone's while to talk. Question is, who would know what we need?" Ava was quiet for a moment, her expression thoughtful. There might be someone, a former employee, Thomas Brennan. He was Victor's personal secretary for some time, handled all his appointments, his correspondence, his schedule. Victor fired him last year for some minor indiscretion. Drinking, I think. Last I heard, he'd taken a job at a shipping company in Philadelphia. Would he talk? If he's angry enough, and if there's money involved. She met Garrett's eyes. But finding him, convincing him, getting the information we need, that all takes time. And time is something we don't have much of. Then we'd better get started. Get. She shook her head slowly, but she was smiling now. Actually smiling. You really mean this? You're actually proposing we break into Victor Fairfield's private office, steal his personal files, and use them to destroy him? That's the general idea. It's insane. You've mentioned that. We'll probably die. You've mentioned that, too. And yet you're still sitting here, planning like this is actually going to happen. That's because it is going to happen. He leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Unless you have a better idea. She looked at him for a long moment, and he saw something change in her face. The fear was still there, the doubt, the knowledge of how badly this could go wrong. But underneath it, there was something new. Determination, maybe. Or just the fierce, stubborn refusal to keep running. I don't have a better idea, she said quietly. I just have the same terrible one you do. Then we're agreed. We're insane, but yes, we're agreed. They spent the rest of the morning planning, or trying to. The truth was, they had more questions than answers, more gaps than solid ground. But slowly, painfully, a rough outline began to take shape. They would need to reach Philadelphia first, find Thomas Brennan, convince him to help. From there, they'd need detailed information about Victor's office, guard rotations, security measures, the best time to attempt entry. Then came the hard part, actually breaking in, locating the files, and getting out without being caught. It sounded impossible when laid out like that, probably because it was. We'll need different clothes, Ava said at one point. I can't walk into Philadelphia looking like this. And you, no offense, but you look like exactly what you are, a frontiersman. We need to blend in, look like we belong. I have money set aside. Not much, but enough for decent clothes and travel expenses and bribes and whatever else comes up. She frowned. This is going to cost more than you have, isn't it? Probably. I could sell something. I still have. She stopped, reached into her pocket, pulled out a small object wrapped in cloth. When she unwrapped it, Garrett saw a ring, gold with a deep green emerald, set in delicate filigree. My mother's, she said quietly. The only thing I managed to keep through everything. It's worth quite a bit. You can't sell that. Why not? It's just a ring. It's not just a ring. It's your mother's. My mother is dead, and the dead don't need jewelry. Her voice was matter-of-fact, but he heard the pain underneath. This is more useful to us as money than as a keepsake. Still? Garrett. She looked at him directly. I appreciate the sentiment, but sentiment won't keep us alive. Money might. So we sell the ring. He wanted to argue, but she was right. Practically speaking, they needed resources more than memories. All right, but we get the best price possible. That ring is worth enough to fund this whole operation if we're smart about it. Agreed. She wrapped it back up, tucked it away. What else? They talked logistics for hours. Routes, timing, contingencies. What to do if things went wrong, which they probably would. How to communicate if they got separated, which they probably would. Where to meet if everything fell apart, which it probably would. It was a plan built on probably, and maybe, and if we're lucky. Not exactly confidence-inspiring, but it was more than they'd had that morning, and more than either of them had had in some time. As the sun started to set, painting the snow outside in shades of orange and pink, Ava stood and moved to the window. She was quiet for a long time, just looking out at the mountains. I haven't asked you about your family, she said finally. Not much to ask about. Everyone has family. Had, he corrected. Past tense. My father died some time ago. Mother before that. No siblings. No one else. I'm sorry. Don't be. We weren't close. He joined her at the window. My father was a hard man. Harder than these mountains. He taught me to hunt, to trap, to survive, but he never taught me to live. Didn't know how, I guess, or didn't care. Is that why you came out here? To get away from him? Partly. Mostly I came because I didn't fit anywhere else. Too rough for cities, too solitary for settlements. Out here, none of that matters. You are what you are, and that's enough. She turned to look at him. And what are you, Garrett Harlan? A man who found a woman dying in the snow and couldn't walk away. That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got. She smiled, soft and sad. You're better than you think you are. You don't know me well enough to say that. Maybe not, but I know you better than you think. She turned back to the window. My father was nothing like yours. He was kind, gentle, believed in doing good in the world. Victor used to say he was too soft for business, too trusting. Maybe he was right. Father died thinking his brother would take care of me, would honor his wishes. He had no idea what Victor really was. You can't blame yourself for that. I don't. I blame Victor, but I also blame myself for not seeing it sooner, for not fighting harder when I still had leverage. Her breath fogged the glass. I spent so much time being what they wanted me to be, the perfect niece, the dutiful heiress, the charming socialite. I forgot to be anything real. You're real now. Am I? Sometimes I'm not sure. I've been running so long, hiding so long, I don't even know who I am anymore. Ava Fairfield feels like someone else, someone I used to be. Then be someone new. It's not that simple. Why not? She looked at him, and he saw tears threatening at the corners of her eyes. Because I'm afraid. All the time. Afraid they'll find me. Afraid I'll never be free. Afraid that even if we somehow pull this off, even if we destroy Victor and take back my life, I'll still be broken. Still be this scared, hollow thing pretending to be a person. Garrett reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he took her hand. It was cold, trembling slightly. You're not broken, he said. You're fighting. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. Broken things don't fight back. They just break. You're still here, still standing. That counts for something. A tear slipped down her cheek. She didn't pull her hand away. I don't feel strong. Strength isn't about feeling. It's about doing. You've been doing the impossible for some time. That's strength, even if it doesn't feel like it. She squeezed his hand, held on tight. They stood like that for a while, watching the light fade from the mountains, neither of them speaking. Sometimes silence said more than words ever could. Eventually she let go, wiped her eyes, straightened her shoulders. We should eat, she said, her voice steadier. And then get some sleep. If we're leaving tomorrow, we'll need to be ready early. Tomorrow? No point in waiting. The longer we stay here, the more chance they have to find us. Better to keep moving. He nodded. She was right, of course. Staying still was dangerous, but part of him wanted to argue anyway. Wanted to give her more time to rest, to heal, to not have to run anymore. But that wasn't an option. Not yet. Maybe not ever. They prepared a simple meal and ate in companionable silence. Garrett found himself watching her when she wasn't looking. The way she held her fork, the careful way she chewed, the slight wince when she moved wrong, and her ribs reminded her they were still healing. She'd been through hell and was about to walk into more, and yet she sat there, planning their next move like it was just another problem to solve. He'd known brave men in his time, Soldiers, hunters. Men who faced death without flinching. But he'd never seen courage quite like this. The kind that kept going even when giving up would be easier, even when giving up would make sense. After dinner, they worked out the details of their departure. Garrett would pack light, what he could carry on horseback without weighing them down. Ava would wear the warmest clothes they had. They'd travel fast, stick to back roads, avoid any settlements where someone might recognize her. "How long to Philadelphia?" she asked. "Sometime, maybe longer, depending on weather and how careful we have to be." "That's a long time to stay hidden." "Yes. And you're sure about this, about leaving your home, your life, everything you've built here?" He looked around the cabin. Rough walls, simple furniture, years of solitary survival. It wasn't much, but it was his. "I'm sure," he said. "You might not be able to come back if this goes wrong. If Victor finds out you helped me." "I know. Then why?" It was a question he'd been asking himself since the moment he'd decided to help her. The answer should have been complicated, layered with reasons and justifications, but it wasn't. "Because it's right," he said simply, "and because I'm tired of being alone." She looked at him with those green eyes, searching. "We barely know each other." "I know enough." "Do you?" "Yes." She was quiet for a moment. Then, so softly he almost didn't hear, "I'm glad you found me in the snow. I'm glad it was you. So am I." They prepared for bed, her in his bed as always, him in the chair by the fire. He'd offered multiple times to sleep on the floor, but she'd refused, said he needed rest as much as she did, that the chair was fine. It had become their routine, this careful negotiation of space and propriety. But tonight, as he settled into the chair, she spoke from the darkness. "Garrett?" "Yeah?" "Thank you for everything, for saving me, for believing me, for standing with me when you had every reason to walk away. You don't have to thank me." "Yes, I do. Because what you're doing, what you're risking, it's more than anyone's ever done for me, more than I deserve. You deserve a lot more than a cabin in the mountains and a half-formed plan to commit burglary." She laughed softly. "Maybe, but it's more than I had some time ago, and that's something." He wanted to say more, wanted to tell her that she deserved safety, freedom, a life without fear, but the words caught in his throat, too big and unwieldy to force out. So instead he said, "Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. You too." But neither of them slept for a long time. Garrett sat in his chair, watching the fire burn down to embers, thinking about the journey ahead, about Philadelphia and Thomas Brennan and Victor Fairfield's locked office, about all the ways this could go wrong, and about the woman in his bed who'd stumbled into his life half frozen and desperate, and somehow changed everything. He'd been alone for so long, he'd forgotten what it felt like to have someone to protect, to care about. It was terrifying and exhilarating and completely impractical, but it was also real in a way nothing else had been for years. Tomorrow, they'd leave this cabin, leave this brief sanctuary they'd carved out of snow and necessity. They'd ride into danger with nothing but hope and determination, and a ring worth enough to fund their foolish plan. They'd probably fail, probably get caught, probably end up dead in some alley or river, just another casualty of power and greed. But maybe, just maybe, they'd succeed. And if they did, if they somehow managed to pull this off, if they destroyed Victor Fairfield and gave Ava back her life, well, that would be something worth dying for. Garrett closed his eyes, listening to the steady rhythm of her breathing from across the room. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the shutters. A wolf howled in the distance, lonely and fierce. Tomorrow they'd go to war, but tonight they were safe. And for now, that was enough. They left at first light, before the sun had fully cleared the mountains. Garrett locked the cabin door, knowing he might never see it again, and found he cared less than he expected. What mattered was already on horseback beside him, dressed in his spare coat, her face hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat. The first few days of travel passed without incident, which made Garrett nervous. Good luck had a way of running out when you needed it most. They kept to hunters' trails and deer paths, avoiding the main roads where Pinkertons might be watching. At night they made cold camps, no fires, sleeping in shifts with the horse tied close. Ava bore it all without complaint, though he could see the exhaustion settling into her bones. She wasn't built for this kind of hard travel, but she pushed through anyway, jaw set, eyes forward, stubborn as the mountains themselves. On the fourth day, they reached a town called Millbrook, barely more than a trading post, and a dozen buildings clustered around a crossroads. Garrett left Ava hidden in the trees, while he went in to buy supplies and gather information. The general store smelled like coffee and sawdust. An old man behind the counter looked Garrett over with the practiced disinterest of someone who'd seen every kind of traveler. "Help you?" "Need provisions. Coffee, dried meat, flour, whatever you've got." The old man nodded, started gathering items. "Passing through?" "That's right. Headed east? Maybe." The old man grunted, rang up the purchases. "Might want to take the northern route if you are. Heard there's Pinkertons on the southern road, stopping travelers, looking for someone." Garrett kept his expression neutral. "That's so?" "Yep. Some woman, they say. Rich family, ran off or got kidnapped, depending on who you ask." The old man handed over the supplies, offering a substantial reward for information. That was a fortune out here, enough to make honest men reconsider their principles. "Sounds like serious business," Garrett said, counting out coins. "Serious money, anyway." The old man pocketed the payment. "You see anything unusual out there? Might be worth reporting." "I'll keep that in mind." Garrett left quickly, heart pounding harder than he wanted to admit. A substantial reward. Half the territory would be watching for her now, memorizing her description, weighing their consciences against that kind of money. He found Ava where he'd left her, but she wasn't alone. A man stood beside his horse, too close to her, talking in a low voice Garrett couldn't hear. He was young, well-dressed, with a gun on his hip that looked too clean to have seen much use. Garrett approached slowly, hand near his own revolver. "Problem here?" The man turned, sized him up. "No problem. Just having a conversation with the lady. The lady's with me." "That so?" The man's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Funny thing, I'm looking for a lady. Missing person. Thought maybe your companion here might know something about that." Ava had gone very still, her face carefully blank. But Garrett could see tension in the line of her shoulders, the way her hand had drifted toward the knife he'd given her. "We don't know anything about missing persons," Garrett said evenly. "We're just passing through." Sure. The man took a step back, but didn't leave. "Still, maybe I should ask her myself. You don't mind, do you?" "Friend?" "I do mind." The man's expression hardened. "Now that's not very neighborly." Neither is bothering people who want to be left alone. They stood there, 3 people in a forest clearing, the weight of unspoken threats hanging between them. The stranger's hand moved closer to his gun. Garrett's was already there. Then Ava spoke, her voice rough and masculine in a way that made Garrett blink. "Mister, I don't know what you're talking about. My brother and I are headed to Pennsylvania to see our sick mother. That's all. No missing ladies, no rewards, nothing interesting." "Brother?" "Smart." The man looked between them, clearly trying to decide if he believed her. Her accent was different, too, flatter, more rural. Nothing like the refined speech pattern she'd used in the cabin. "Pennsylvania?" the man repeated slowly. "That's right. Now, if you don't mind, we'd like to get moving. Got a long way to go." The stranger studied her for another moment, then shrugged. "Guess I was mistaken. Safe travels." He walked away, but Garrett noticed he looked back twice before disappearing into the trees. They waited in tense silence until the sound of his horse had faded completely. "We need to move," Garrett said quietly. "Now." They rode hard for the next hour, putting distance between themselves and Millbrook. When they finally stopped to rest the horse, Ava was shaking. "That was close," she said. "Too close. And it's going to keep happening. A substantial reward is enough to turn everyone between here and Philadelphia into a bounty hunter." "I know." She leaned against a tree, suddenly looking very young and very tired. "Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe I should go alone. Let you—" "No. Garrett. No, we're not having that conversation again." He checked the horse, adjusted the saddle. "But we do need to be smarter, change our appearance more, and we need to reach Philadelphia faster, before word spreads too far." "How much faster?" "We'll have to risk the main roads, travel at night when we can. It's dangerous, but staying hidden is getting more dangerous." She nodded, understanding the calculation. They were trading one risk for another, hoping they'd pick the lesser of two evils. That night they did risk a small fire, hidden in a ravine where the light wouldn't carry. Ava sat close to the flames, her hands wrapped around a tin cup of coffee. "I keep thinking about what comes after," she said suddenly. "After what?" "After we get the files, after we expose Victor, assuming we survive all that." "What then?" Garrett had been wondering the same thing. "I suppose you'd reclaim your life, your name, your fortune. Would I want to?" She looked up at him. "That life, that world, it made me miserable. Made me into someone I didn't like very much. Why would I go back to it? Because it's yours. Because Victor took it from you. Or because I'm finally free of it." She set down the cup. "When I ran, I thought I was running towards something. Safety, freedom, a new life. But really, I was just running away. From Victor, yes, but also from everything else. The expectations, the obligations, the performance of being Ava Fairfield. Who do you want to be instead?" "I don't know. That's the terrifying part. I spent so long being what everyone else wanted, I forgot to figure out what I wanted." She looked at him across the fire. "What about you? What do you want?" The question caught him off guard. No one had asked him that in years, maybe ever. "I want you to be safe," he said finally. "I want Victor to pay for what he did. Beyond that," he shrugged. "Haven't thought much past surviving. That's not much of a plan. Neither is not knowing who you want to be." She smiled despite herself. "Fair point." They fell into silence, the fire crackling between them. Garrett found himself studying her face in the firelight, the sharp intelligence in her eyes, the stubborn set of her jaw, the way exhaustion and fear and determination all mixed together in her expression. She'd changed since that first day, or maybe he was just seeing her more clearly now, less the mysterious heiress, more the flesh and blood woman trying to survive impossible circumstances. "Can I ask you something?" she said after a while. "Sure." "That cabin, your life before I showed up, were you happy?" He considered lying, giving her the easy answer. But she'd been honest with him about her own uncertainties. She deserved the same. "No," he said. "I wasn't unhappy exactly, but I wasn't happy either. I was just existing, going through the motions, surviving. And now I'm terrified every minute of every day, convinced we're going to get caught, get killed, fail at everything we're trying to do. He met her eyes. But I'm not just existing anymore. So, there's that. She laughed, soft and sad. That's a terrible silver lining. Best I can do. It's enough. She stood, moved to her bedroll. We should sleep. Long ride tomorrow. They traveled for some more days, pushing hard, changing routes constantly, always watching for signs they were being followed. Twice they spotted riders in the distance who might have been Pinkertons, might have been innocent travelers. They didn't wait to find out, just altered course and kept moving. The weather turned bitter as they moved east, winter asserting itself with cruel efficiency. Snow became ice, became freezing rain that soaked through every layer and turned the roads to mud. The horse struggled. Ava shivered constantly, and Garrett's hands went numb on the reins, but they kept going. Philadelphia appeared through the rain on a gray afternoon, all brick and smoke and the dull roar of commerce. It was the biggest city Garrett had seen in years, and he hated it immediately. Too many people, too much noise, too many places for threats to hide. Ava pulled her hat lower as they entered the outskirts. We need to find Thomas before we do anything else. You know where he lives? No. But I know where he works, the Kensington Shipping Company on the waterfront. They found a stable that would take the horse, then made their way through crowded streets toward the river. Garrett kept one hand on Ava's arm, not trusting the press of bodies, the chaos. Every face could be a Pinkerton, every glance a threat. The shipping company was a massive brick building that smelled like tar and salt water. Inside, a harried clerk barely looked up when they asked for Thomas Brennan. Loading dock 3. Tell him to get back to work when you're done talking. They found him supervising a crew unloading crates from a barge. He was older than Garrett expected, maybe in his 50s, with gray in his hair and lines around his eyes that spoke of hard living. When Ava approached, he didn't recognize her at first. Mr. Brennan? He turned, wiped sweat from his forehead. Yeah? Who's asking? Someone who needs information about Victor Fairfield, and who's willing to pay for it. At Victor's name, Brennan's expression shifted, anger flashing across his features before he controlled it. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. Ava lowered her voice. You worked for him. You know what he is, what he's capable of. I need details about his New York office, security, schedules, how to get inside. Lady, I don't know who you think you are, but I'm not interested in... He stopped, looked closer at her face. Something clicked. Wait, you're... No, you can't be. I am, and I need to speak with Mr. Brennan immediately. Brennan looked around nervously, checking to see who was listening. Not here. There's a tavern 2 blocks south, the Anchor. Meet me there in some time. He walked away before they could respond, barking orders at his crew like nothing had happened. The Anchor was exactly what it sounded like, a dark, smoke-filled room where dock workers drank away their wages and nobody asked questions. Garrett and Ava found a corner table and waited. Brennan showed up after some time, looking nervous. He sat down heavily, ordered whiskey, drank half of it in one swallow. You're insane, he said to Ava. Coming here looking for me. Whatever you're planning, it's suicide. Probably, she agreed. But I'm doing it anyway. The question is whether you'll help. Why would I? Because Victor ruined your life. Because he'll ruin more lives if someone doesn't stop him. Because it's the right thing to do. She paused. And because I'll pay you. How much? Garrett set a small pouch on the table. Inside was half the money they'd gotten from selling Ava's ring. A small fortune, by any standard. Brennan stared at it, then at them. What exactly do you want to know? Everything, Ava said. The office layout, security measures, when Victor's there and when he's not, guard schedules, lock types, anything that would help someone get in and out without being caught. Someone like you. Yes. Brennan finished his whiskey, ordered another. When it came, he spoke quietly, eyes on the table. The office is on the 3rd floor of the building. Victor owns the whole structure, but only uses the top floor. There's a main entrance with a doorman who works from morning until evening. After that, the building's locked, but not guarded. Victor has a private office at the end of the hall. That's where he keeps his important files. The lock? Garrett asked. German combination lock. Custom made. I never knew the combination, but I watched him open it enough times. He's paranoid about people watching, always shields the dial with his body. But he has a pattern. Always starts at 0. Spins right first, then left, then right again. Numbers are probably significant. Birth dates, anniversaries, something personal. When is he there? Varies. He's unpredictable on purpose, doesn't keep a regular schedule, but he always spends weekends at his estate upstate. Leaves Friday afternoon, doesn't come back until Monday morning. The office is empty weekends, except for a night watchman who makes rounds every couple of hours. Ava leaned forward. How do you know all this? Because I spent some time managing his schedule, arranging his meetings, coordinating his security. I know that office better than my own home. Bitterness crept into his voice, and he threw me out like garbage the moment I wasn't useful anymore. Why did he fire you? Garrett asked. Said I was drinking on the job. I wasn't, but it didn't matter. Truth is, I'd started asking questions about some of his business dealings. Things that didn't add up. Money moving in ways it shouldn't. He couldn't have me knowing too much, so he got rid of me. Ruined my reputation in the process, so no one decent would hire me. I'm sorry, Ava said. Save your sorry. Just tell me you're actually going to hurt him with this. Tell me it's not for nothing. If we can get those files, we can destroy him. Expose every dirty deal, every bribe, every crime. He'll lose everything. Good. Brennan took the money pouch, pocketed it. Then I'll tell you one more thing. The file you want. The one with all his insurance documentation. It's kept in a red ledger. 3rd shelf behind the law books. He thinks it's clever hiding it in plain sight, but I saw him pull it out enough times to know exactly where it is. Thank you, Ava said quietly. Don't thank me yet. Getting in is one thing. Getting out alive is something else entirely. He stood to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, I hope you make it. Someone should make Victor Fairfield pay for what he's done. After he left, Garrett and Ava sat in silence processing the information. Friday night, Garrett said finally. That's our window. Sometime from now? Yes. And if we're wrong about the schedule, if Victor decides to work late, if the watchman comes early, then we improvise. She laughed, hollow and tired. Improvise, right. That's a solid plan. You have a better one? No, I really don't. She pushed her drink away, untouched. We should find a place to stay, somewhere cheap, somewhere we won't be noticed. They found a boarding house 3 blocks away that asked no questions and took cash. The room was small and dirty with a single bed and a window that overlooked an alley. Not comfortable, but it would do. That night, Garrett took the floor without discussion. Ava didn't argue, just curled up under the thin blanket and closed her eyes. But he could tell from her breathing she wasn't sleeping. You scared? He asked after a while. Terrified. Me too. But you're still going through with it. So are you. She rolled over to face him in the darkness. What if we fail? What if this whole thing was just a stupid fantasy and we end up dead for nothing? Then at least we tried. At least we didn't spend the rest of our lives running and wondering what if. That's not very comforting. I'm not trying to comfort you. I'm trying to be honest. She was quiet for a moment, then, I'm glad you're here. I don't think I could do this alone. You wouldn't have to. If I wasn't here, you'd find someone else. Someone smarter, probably. Better at this kind of thing. I don't want someone smarter. I want someone I can trust. And that's you. The words hit harder than they should have. Trust was a rare commodity in his experience, something earned slowly and lost quickly. That she offered it so freely despite everything, despite barely knowing him. It meant something. Maybe everything. Get some sleep, he said, because he didn't know what else to say. Friday will come soon enough. She did sleep eventually, exhaustion winning out over fear. Garrett lay awake, staring at the ceiling, running through scenarios. Best case, worst case, everything in between. Most of them ended badly. Some ended catastrophically. But a few, just a few, ended with them walking out of that building with the evidence they needed, with Victor's entire corrupt empire laid bare, ready to collapse. It wasn't much to hope for, but it was something. Friday arrived gray and cold, the sky threatening snow. They spent the morning watching the building from a coffee shop across the street, memorizing patterns. The doorman left at evening, just like Brennan said. The night watchman arrived sometime later, a heavy-set man who looked more bored than vigilant. At full darkness, as night settled over the city, they made their move. The building's back entrance was locked, but not complicated. Garrett had it open in under a minute, and they slipped inside, boots silent on the marble floor. The interior was dark, except for gas lamps burning low in the hallways. They climbed the stairs slowly, listening for sounds of the watchman. On the third floor, they paused at the landing, letting their eyes adjust to the deeper darkness. Victor's office was at the end of the hall, just like Brennan had said. The door was solid oak, expensive, with the combination lock mounted where a normal keyhole would be. Garrett knelt in front of it, studying the mechanism by matchlight. You said you knew significant dates? My father's birthday was sometime in spring. My mother's was sometime in fall. Victor's is... She stopped. Wait, try sometime in late fall. What's that date? The day my father died. The day Victor took control of everything. Garrett tried the combination, spinning the dial carefully. Right to one number, left to another, right to 0. The lock didn't budge. Backwards, Ava whispered. Try it backwards. The other way. He did. Something clicked. The lock opened. They stood frozen for a moment, hardly believing it had actually worked. Then Garrett pushed the door open, and they stepped inside. The office was exactly as Brennan described. Large, furnished with dark wood and leather, shelves lined with law books and ledgers. Garrett moved to the window, checked the street below, while Ava went straight to the third shelf. She found the red ledger almost immediately, pulled it out with shaking hands, started flipping through pages. This is it, she breathed. Names, dates, amounts, everything. It's all here. Can you carry it? It's too big, too obvious, but if I can. She stopped, listening. Footsteps in the hallway. Heavy, slow. The watchman making his rounds. They had maybe some time before he reached the door. Garrett looked around frantically for somewhere to hide, but the office was too open, too exposed. If the watchman checked the room, they were caught. Ava made a decision. She tore pages from the ledger, as many as she could grab, and shoved them inside her coat. Then she put the ledger back, positioned exactly as it had been. The footsteps were closer now. They had limited time. Garrett grabbed her hand and pulled her behind the desk. Not much cover, but the best they had. They crouched there, barely breathing, as the door swung open. The watchman's lantern light swept the room. Garrett felt Ava tense beside him, preparing to run or fight or whatever desperate thing came next. The light passed over the desk, stopped, came back. They were caught. But then a voice called from downstairs. "Henry, need you down here." The watchman muttered something irritated, withdrew. His footsteps receded down the hall, down the stairs. Garrett and Ava stayed frozen for another full minute listening. When they were sure he was really gone, they stood on shaking legs. "We need to leave," Garrett whispered. "Now!" They made it out of the building the same way they'd come in, walking quickly, but not running, trying to look like they belonged there. Only when they'd turned the corner and disappeared into the maze of streets did they allow themselves to run. They didn't stop until they were back at the boarding house, door locked, breathing hard. Ava pulled the stolen pages from her coat, spread them on the bed. Even in the dim light, Garrett could see they were explosive. Detailed records of bribes, extortion, fraud, names of senators, judges, business magnates, amounts that made his head spin. "It's enough," Ava said, wonder and fear mixing in her voice. "It's enough to destroy him. If we can get it to the right people. I know someone, a journalist in New York, someone Victor hasn't managed to buy or intimidate yet. If we can get these documents to him." A knock at the door cut her off. They both froze. It was past midnight, no legitimate reason for someone to knock. Another knock, harder this time. Then a voice, smooth and cold. "Miss Fairfield, I know you're in there. We should talk." Garrett moved to the window, looked out. Several men in the alley below watching the building. No escape that way. The voice continued. "You've been very clever, very resourceful, but this ends now. Open the door, or we'll open it for you." Ava looked at Garrett, documents clutched in her hands. Her face was pale but determined. "The window," she whispered. "There's men outside." "Then we fight!" Before he could argue, she was moving, grabbing the lamp, throwing open the window, hurling it down at the men below. They scattered, shouting, and in that moment of chaos, Ava climbed onto the windowsill. "Come on!" The door crashed open behind them. Garrett didn't think, just moved, grabbed her hand as she jumped, and they fell together into the darkness, praying for luck they probably didn't deserve. They hit the pile of refuse bags in the alley, hard enough to knock the wind from Garrett's lungs. Garbage and rotting vegetables cushioned the fall, but pain still shot through his shoulder as he rolled. Ava landed beside him with a grunt, already scrambling to her feet. The men who'd been waiting below had scattered when the lamp exploded, but they were recovering fast. Garrett saw one reaching for his gun, another blocking the alley entrance. "This way!" Ava grabbed his arm, pulling him toward a narrow gap between buildings. They squeezed through, emerged onto another street, kept running. Behind them, shouts, footsteps, the sound of pursuit. They ran through Philadelphia's maze of alleys and side streets, taking turns at random, trying to lose their hunters in the confusion of the city. Garrett's shoulders screamed with every movement, and he could hear Ava's ragged breathing beside him, but they didn't slow down. Finally, when the sounds of pursuit had faded and his legs were threatening to give out, Garrett pulled them into a recessed doorway. They pressed against the shadows, trying to catch their breath. "The documents!" he gasped. "Did you—" Ava patted her coat. Still there. Somehow, impossibly, she'd held on to them through the fall and the chase. "We can't go back to the boarding house," she said between breaths. "They'll be watching it. We can't stay on the streets either. They'll find us." "Then where?" Garrett thought fast, mind racing through limited options. The stables, where we left the horse. It's public enough they might not think to watch it, and we can leave the city from there. Leave and go where? They know we're in Philadelphia now. They'll have people at every rail station, every coach line. Then we ride, same as we came in. Garrett, we barely made it here. We can't. We don't have a choice. He looked at her directly. Those men back there, they weren't trying to arrest you. They were trying to take you, quietly. No witnesses. Victor's done with polite pursuit. This is endgame now. She knew he was right. He could see it in her eyes. The recognition that whatever slim margin of safety they'd had was gone. They were hunted animals now, and the only question was how long they could stay ahead of the pack. They moved through the city carefully, sticking to darker streets, avoiding main thoroughfares. It took some time to reach the stables, and every minute of it, Garrett expected to hear shouts behind them, to feel a hand grab his shoulder, but they made it. The stable was quiet, just one old man dozing in the office. Garrett woke him gently, paid for the horse, let it out into the night. "We need supplies," Ava said as they walked the horse away from the stable. "Food, blankets, anything we can carry. There's a market 2 streets over. It'll be closed, but we break in." He looked at her. This woman who'd been raised in mansions and ballrooms, now suggesting burglary like it was the most natural thing in the world. "You've come a long way from society parties." "Society parties never tried to kill me." They found the market, and Garrett made quick work of the lock. Inside, they grabbed what they could: dried meat, bread, a couple of blankets, matches, left money on the counter, probably more than it was worth. But stealing sat wrong with both of them even now. As they packed the supplies onto the horse, a voice cut through the darkness. Well, look at this!" Garrett spun, hand going to his gun. Several men emerged from the shadows, fanning out to surround them. Not Pinkertons this time. Rougher. Meaner looking. Street thugs, probably hired for exactly this kind of work. The leader stepped forward, a thick-set man with a scar across his jaw. "Miss Fairfield, you've been hard to find." "Let us go," Ava said, her voice steady despite the fear Garrett could feel radiating from her. "This doesn't concern you. A substantial reward says it does concern us, and the gentleman who hired us, he's offering even more if we bring you in alive." The man smiled, showing broken teeth. "Course, he didn't say you had to be undamaged." Garrett drew his revolver, leveling it at the leader's chest. "Walk away right now, or this ends badly for everyone." The man laughed. "Several against 2, and the lady don't look like much of a fighter. I'll take those odds." 3 against 2. A new voice said from behind them. Everyone turned. A woman stood there, tall and lean, with a rifle held casually in her hands. She was maybe in her 40s, dressed like a man, with gray streaking through her dark hair. "Don't know you, lady," the scarred man said. "Don't need to. Just need to know I don't like men who threaten women, or cowards who work several to one." She raised the rifle slightly. "So, here's what's going to happen. You're going to walk away, and these folks are going to leave, and nobody's going to do anything stupid. And if we don't, then I start shooting, and I rarely miss." She smiled, cold and dangerous. "Your choice." The scarred man looked between them, calculating odds. Finally, he spat on the ground. "This ain't over." "Sure it is," the woman said. "Now go." The thugs retreated, but Garrett could see murder in their eyes. They'd be back, probably with reinforcements. The woman lowered her rifle, looked at Garrett and Ava. "You two need to get out of this city right now." "Who are you?" Garrett asked. "Name's Ruth Cooper, and you're the most wanted people in Philadelphia at the moment. Half the underworld's looking for you." How did you? I make it my business to know things. Also makes it my business to help people who need it. She nodded at Ava. Heard about you. What your uncle did. Figure anyone Victor Fairfield wants that badly is someone worth helping. Why would you help us? Ava asked. Because I don't like bullies. And because Fairfield once destroyed someone I cared about. Consider this payback. Ruth glanced down the street. But we're wasting time. Those boys will be back with friends. You need to leave, and you need a plan that's better than just running blind. We have documents, Ava said. Evidence of Victor's crimes. We were going to take them to a journalist. Which journalist? Samuel Cross. He runs an independent paper in New York. Ruth nodded slowly. Cross is solid. He'd print it. But you'll never make it to New York alive, not with every hired gun in 3 states looking for you. Then what do you suggest? Garrett asked. I suggest you let me get the documents to Cross while you two disappear somewhere safe. Somewhere Victor's men won't think to look. I'm not giving these documents to someone I just met, Ava said. Smart. Don't trust easy. I respect that. Ruth lowered her rifle. So, here's what we do. I have a contact who can get messages to Cross safely. You write a letter, explain what you have, where it came from. I get it to him along with a sample of the documents. Just a few pages, enough to prove they're real. He publishes what you give him, promises more to come, if he can guarantee your safety. And then? Then you two get on that horse and ride west, not back the way you came. They'll be watching those routes. Head south instead, down to Virginia, then west into the mountains. Find somewhere isolated, and stay there until the storm you're about to create blows over. And it made sense, more sense than anything they'd planned so far. But trusting a stranger with evidence that could destroy. Victor felt like betting everything on a single card. Garrett looked at Ava. Your call. She studied Ruth for a long moment, weighing options. Finally, she pulled the documents from her coat, selected 3 pages that detailed some of Victor's worst dealings, handed them to Ruth. Get these to Cross. Tell him there's more, much more, but only if he can guarantee protection. I'll tell him. Ruth pocketed the pages. Now go, and don't stop until you're at least some distance south of here. They rode out of Philadelphia as dawn was breaking, the city waking around them. Garrett kept waiting for someone to stop them, to recognize Ava, to raise an alarm. But they passed through the streets like ghosts, and soon the city was behind them, fading into morning mist. They traveled hard that first day, putting as much distance as they could between themselves and Philadelphia. The horse was tired. They were exhausted, but fear kept them moving. Every rider they passed could be a threat. Every town they skirted might hold Pinkertons. By nightfall, they'd crossed into another state, and Garrett finally allowed them to stop. They made camp in a grove of trees well off the main road. No fire again, just cold food and colder blankets. Do you think she'll really do it? Ava asked in the darkness. Ruth, do you think she'll get those pages to Cross? I don't know, but we didn't have better options. We're just making this up as we go, aren't we? The whole thing, every step. Pretty much. She laughed, tired and slightly hysterical. We broke into one of the most powerful men in America's office, stole his private documents, jumped out a second-story window, and now we're running for our lives, based on the advice of a stranger we met in an alley. When you put it that way, it does sound insane. Because it is insane. All of it. She shifted in her bedroll. But what's the alternative? Give up? Let Victor win? No. Then I guess we keep being insane. They rode for some more days, moving through Maryland and into Virginia. The landscape changed. Mountains rising in the distance, promising the isolation Ruth had suggested. They were careful, methodical, doubling back on their trail, watching for pursuit. On the fourth day in a small town called Heiressville, they saw their first newspaper. The headline made Garrett's blood run cold. Fairfield heiress spotted in Philadelphia. Manhunt intensifies. But it was the article below that stopped his heart. Independent journalist murdered in New York. Samuel Cross dead. Shot in his office some time ago. No suspects, no witnesses, no arrests. Ava read over his shoulder, her face going white. No, 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 no. We don't know it's connected. Of course it's connected. Victor found out we contacted him, or he suspected. Or... She grabbed the paper, scanned the rest of the article. There's nothing here about the documents, nothing about exposing Victor. Cross died for nothing. We don't know that Ruth even got to him before. It doesn't matter. She crumpled the paper, her hands shaking. Don't you see? Even if she did, even if he had the documents, they died with him. Victor made sure of that. Garrett felt the walls closing in, options narrowing. Cross had been their best chance, maybe their only chance. Without him, without someone willing to publish the evidence, we need a new plan, he said. What plan? Everyone who could help us is either bought, scared, or dead. Victor controls the narrative, controls the press, controls everything. We can't fight that. Then we don't fight it through newspapers. We find another way. What other way? He didn't have an answer, not yet. But he could see Ava spiraling, fear and despair taking over. They'd come so far, risked so much, and it was all falling apart. Listen to me, he said, gripping her shoulders. We're not done yet. We still have the rest of the documents. We still have proof. So Cross is gone. We'll find someone else. Another journalist, a lawyer, someone in the government who isn't in Victor's pocket. You make it sound so simple. It's not simple. It's probably impossible. But giving up definitely won't work. So we might as well try the impossible thing. She looked at him with those green eyes, searching for hope she clearly didn't feel. Why do you still believe we can win this? Because the alternative is unacceptable. That's not a reason. It's the only one I've got. They left Heiressville and continued west, but the news about Cross had shaken them both. Every mile felt heavier, every decision more uncertain. They were running out of allies, out of options, out of time. Sometime later in a town called Riverton, their luck ran out completely. Garrett saw them first, several men watching the general store from across the street. Pinkertons, by the look of them. Professional, patient, waiting for someone. Waiting for Ava. Don't look, he murmured, steering her toward their horse. Just walk normal. But one of the Pinkertons had already seen them. Garrett watched recognition flash across the man's face, saw him signal his partners. Run, Garrett said. They ran. This time there was no clever escape, no narrow alley to disappear into, just Main Street and open road and several armed men giving chase. Garrett fired his revolver behind them, not trying to hit anyone, just slow them down. It bought them maybe some time. They reached the horse. Garrett all but threw Ava into the saddle before swinging up behind her. The animal bolted at his command, hooves pounding dirt as gunshots cracked the air. Something burned across Garrett's arm, a bullet close enough to graze. He leaned low over the horse's neck, urging it faster. They rode hard for an hour before Garrett risked slowing down. When he finally did, the horse was lathered and blowing hard. His arm was bleeding, nothing serious, but it needed attention. Let me see, Ava said, already tearing fabric from her shirt to make a bandage. It's fine. It's bleeding. That's not fine. She wrapped it tightly, her hand steady despite everything. We can't keep doing this, running, fighting, barely staying ahead. Eventually we'll make a mistake, and it'll be over. I know. So what do we do? Garrett looked at her, this woman who'd been chased across half the country, who jumped out of windows and stolen documents and kept going when anyone else would have given up. She deserved better than this endless flight, this slow grinding down of hope. We stop running, he said. What? We stop running and we face this head on. No more hiding, no more hoping someone else will save us. We take what we know and we make it public ourselves. How? We already tried that with Cross. Not through the press, through the courts. The idea was forming as he spoke, crystallizing into something that might actually work. You still have rights, Ava. Legal rights. You're Victor's niece, a legitimate heir to the Fairfield fortune. He had you declared incompetent, but that can be challenged. If we can get you in front of a judge, if we can present the evidence of what Victor's really been doing, he owns judges, he owns the courts. Not all of them. There have to be some he hasn't bought yet, and all we need is one honest judge willing to hear your case. And where exactly do we find this mythical honest judge? I don't know yet, but I know running isn't working, so we try something else. She was quiet for a long time, considering. Finally, she nodded. All right, we try something else. But not here, not in Virginia. If we're going to court, we do it in New York, where Victor's power is most concentrated, where the stakes are highest. That's walking into the lion's den. Yes, but it's also where the press is, where the political establishment is, where we can make the most noise. Victor can silence one journalist, he can silence a dozen. But if we make enough noise in the right place, eventually someone will have to listen. It was a terrible plan. Suicidal, really. But it was better than anything else they had. New York, Garrett agreed. But we'll need help. Someone who knows the legal system, who can navigate the courts. I might know someone, a friend of my father's. Richard Aldridge. He's a lawyer, a good one. He and Victor used to work together, but they had a falling out years ago. Something about ethics. She smiled grimly. If anyone would be willing to take on Victor in court, it would be him. Can we trust him? I don't know, but we're about out of people to trust, so he'll have to do. They spent the next week making their way north, moving cautiously, avoiding major roads. News of the Philadelphia incident had spread. Every paper they saw carried some version of the story. Most painted Ava as deranged, dangerous, possibly violent. Victor's propaganda machine working at full capacity. But there were also stories, smaller, buried deeper, questioning the official narrative, asking why the Fairfield family was so desperate to find one missing heiress, wondering what she might know that made her so dangerous to leave free. Cross's murder had backfired on Victor in that one small way. It had raised questions, created doubt. Not much, but enough to make a few people pay attention. They reached New York on a cold morning in early winter. The city was massive, overwhelming, a roar of humanity and commerce that made Philadelphia seem small by comparison. Garrett had never felt more out of place, but Ava moved through the crowds with growing confidence, remembering her way through streets she'd known as a child. They found Richard Aldridge's office in a respectable building downtown. The nameplate on the door read, Aldridge and Associates, Attorneys at Law. Ava knocked. A young clerk answered, looked them over with barely disguised disdain. They were dirty from travel, worn down by weeks on the run. Not the kind of clients a firm like this typically saw. "We need to see Mr. Aldridge," Ava said. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but tell him Ava Fairfield is here. He'll see me." The clerk's expression changed instantly. Recognition, shock, fear. You can't be. I am, and I need to speak with Mr. Aldridge immediately. The clerk disappeared into the inner office. Raised voices filtered through the door, too muffled to make out words. Then the door opened, and a man emerged, late in his 50s, well-dressed, with sharp eyes that took in everything at a glance. "Miss Fairfield, please come in." Quickly, they followed him into his office. He shut the door, locked it, closed the curtains. "Do you have any idea how many people are looking for you?" he said without preamble. "I have some idea, yes. Your uncle has half the city watching for you. Pinkertons, police, private detectives. There's a substantial reward. I know about the reward. That's not why we're here." Aldridge looked at Garrett for the first time. "And you are?" "Garrett Harlan. I'm helping Ava." "I see." Aldridge moved behind his desk, sat down heavily. "Why have you come to me?" "Because I need a lawyer who isn't afraid of Victor Fairfield. Because I have evidence of crimes he's committed, and I need someone to present it in court. And because my father trusted you once, and I'm hoping that trust wasn't misplaced. Your father was a good man. Victor is not." "I know. That's why I'm here." Aldridge was quiet for a moment, studying her. What kind of evidence? Ava pulled the remaining documents from her coat, spread them on his desk. Financial records, bribes, fraud, extortion, names, dates, amounts, everything needed to prove Victor Fairfield is a criminal. Aldridge picked up the pages, started reading. His expression grew darker with each line. Finally, he set them down. "Where did you get these?" "His private office in New York." "You stole them." "I reclaimed what was rightfully mine. Those records document crimes committed using my family's company, my family's name. I have every right to them." A prosecutor might disagree. These could be considered inadmissible. Then we don't go to a prosecutor. We go directly to a judge. File for an emergency hearing to contest my incompetency ruling. Once we're in court, once this becomes public, Victor can't make it disappear quietly. Aldridge leaned back in his chair. "You understand what you're asking? If I take this case, if I go up against Victor Fairfield in open court, it could destroy my career. He has influence everywhere, connections that run deep. He could ruin me." "I know, and I'm sorry for that. But I don't have anywhere else to turn." "What about the press?" "Surely. The journalist we contacted was murdered, shot in his office. We can't trust the press because we don't know who else Victor owns." Aldridge absorbed this, his face grim. "I see." He stood, moved to the window, looked out at the city. For a long moment, he didn't speak, and Garrett thought he was going to refuse. Was going to send them away to protect himself. Then he turned back. "Your father once told me that the law was meant to protect the powerless from the powerful. That justice wasn't about winning. It was about standing up when no one else would." He smiled, sad and determined. "I think he'd want me to help you." "You'll take the case?" "I'll take the case. But we do this right. Legally. Properly. By the book. No more breaking into offices, no more stolen documents. From this point forward, everything has to be defensible in court." "Agreed. And you two need to stay hidden until the hearing. If Victor finds you before we get in front of a judge, this is all over." "Where would we hide?" Garrett asked. "He has people everywhere. I have a safe house, a property my firm keeps for clients who need protection. It's discreet, secure. You can stay there while I prepare the case." He gathered the documents. "How long will it take me to get a hearing?" "Normally, some time. But if I call in some favors, pull some strings," he calculated. "A few days. I can get you in front of Judge Morrison. She's tough, fair, and she hates corruption. If anyone will listen, it's her." "A few days. They just had to stay hidden for a few days. "Thank you," Ava said quietly. "Don't thank me yet. We still have to win." Aldridge moved to the door. "My clerk will take you to the safe house. Don't go anywhere. Don't contact anyone. Don't do anything that might expose your location. Understood?" They understood. The safe house was a modest apartment in a quiet neighborhood, furnished simply but comfortably. After weeks on the run, sleeping rough, it felt like luxury. Real beds, running water, food that wasn't dried or stale. That first night, Ava took a bath that lasted an hour. When she emerged, clean and dressed in clothes Aldridge had provided, she looked more like the refined woman from the cabin, and less like the fugitive she'd been. "I almost forgot what it felt like," she said, sitting on the sofa. "To be clean, to feel safe, even temporarily." Garrett had cleaned up too, his arm properly bandaged, the accumulated dirt and exhaustion washed away. "A few days," he said. "Then we face Victor. I keep thinking about what happens if we lose, if the judge doesn't believe us, if Victor's lawyers tear us apart, if... Don't. Don't what? Don't imagine failure before we've even tried. We'll face what comes when it comes." She looked at him, and something in her expression shifted. "I don't know what I would have done without you. Probably died in that snow, or given up somewhere along the way." "You wouldn't have given up. You're too stubborn for that." "Maybe, but I wouldn't have made it this far." She moved closer, sitting beside him. "When this is over, assuming we survive, assuming we win, what will you do?" "I don't know. Haven't thought that far ahead. The cabin's probably gone by now. Victor's people would have found it. Maybe burned it. Probably. So you'll need somewhere new to go. A new life." He considered this. His old life felt distant now, like something that had happened to someone else. The solitary trapper, the man who'd chosen isolation. That person didn't exist anymore, or if he did, Garrett didn't want to be him. "What about you?" he asked. "After we win, after you reclaim your name, your fortune, will you go back to being Ava Fairfield, society heiress?" "No. I don't think I could if I wanted to. Too much has changed." She was quiet for a moment. "I've been thinking about what Ruth said, about disappearing somewhere safe. Maybe that's not such a bad idea. Take enough money to be comfortable and just leave. Start over somewhere no one knows me. That sounds lonely." "It does, doesn't it?" She looked at him directly. "Unless someone came with me." The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Garrett met her eyes, saw the question there, the hope. "You're asking me to. I'm asking if maybe, when this is over, we could figure out what comes next together instead of separately." His heart was pounding in a way that had nothing to do with fear. "Ava, you don't have to answer now. I just wanted you to know that if you wanted, if there was something here worth staying for." She trailed off, looking uncertain for the first time since he'd known her. Garrett reached out, took her hand. "There is. There's definitely something worth staying for." She smiled, relieved and genuine. "Good. That's good." They sat like that, hands linked, not speaking, just existing in the quiet certainty of whatever this was between them. It wasn't love, not yet. Too new, too complicated. But it was something. A foundation, maybe. A beginning. Outside, New York roared and churned, full of threats and danger, and Victor Fairfield's hunting dogs. In a few days, they'd walk into a courtroom and gamble everything on justice they weren't sure existed. But for now, in this moment, they had each other. And that felt like enough. The few days passed like years compressed into hours. Aldridge came each evening with updates. The hearing was scheduled. Judge Morrison had agreed to see them. Victor's lawyers were already filing motions to dismiss. Every word felt like another chess piece moving into position. On the night before the hearing, Aldridge arrived with news that changed everything. "Victor knows you're in the city," he said without preamble. "He doesn't know where exactly, but he's flooding the streets with men. Every hotel, boarding house, even hospitals are being watched. He's getting desperate." "Good," Ava said. "Desperate people make mistakes. Or dangerous decisions." Aldridge set his briefcase on the table. "There's something else. I've been contacted by someone claiming to represent a group of Victor's former business associates. People he's betrayed or squeezed out over the years. They're willing to testify." Garrett felt hope flare, then die just as quickly. It could be a trap. It could be. But their information checks out. Names, dates, deals that align with what's in your documents. If they're legitimate, their testimony could be devastating. "If," Ava repeated. "That's a big word to hang a case on. It's what we have. The question is whether we use it." Ava looked at Garrett, and he saw the weight of the decision in her eyes. Trust the wrong person, and they'd walk into an ambush. But refuse potential allies, and they might lose their only chance at victory. "How many people?" she asked. "3, all former executives at Fairfield Industries, all with grievances and evidence. Set up a meeting tomorrow morning before the hearing. Somewhere public, somewhere Victor's men wouldn't dare make a scene." Aldridge nodded. "I'll arrange it. But Ava, this hearing is going to be brutal. Victor will have the best lawyers money can buy, and they'll try to destroy your credibility, your sanity, everything. Are you ready for that?" "No," she said honestly, "but I'm doing it anyway." After Aldridge left, Garrett found Ava standing at the window looking out at the city lights. She'd been quiet since they'd arrived at the safe house, processing everything, preparing herself for what was coming. "You should sleep," he said. "Can't. Too many thoughts." She turned to face him. "I keep imagining tomorrow, walking into that courtroom, seeing Victor's face. What I'll say, how I'll say it, whether anyone will even believe me. They'll believe you. You don't know that. I know you. I know what you've survived, what you've done to get here. Anyone who hears your story will know it's true." She moved away from the window, sat on the sofa. "When I was a girl, my father used to take me to his office. He'd let me sit in the big chair behind his desk and pretend I was running the company. I loved it. The power, the importance. I thought that's what my life would be, running Fairfield Industries, making it something good." She laughed bitterly. "Stupid dream." "It wasn't stupid. It was naive. I thought power and goodness could coexist. That you could be rich and influential and still do right by people. But Victor proved that wrong. Power doesn't care about goodness. It just wants more power." Garrett sat beside her. "Your father managed it. From what you've told me, he was decent and powerful. And he died young. His legacy stolen by his brother. Maybe that's the lesson. Good people don't win in that world. Or maybe the lesson is that good people have to fight harder." He took her hand. "What you're doing tomorrow, taking on Victor in his own territory, that's not naive. That's brave. And maybe that's what it takes to beat people like him. Not matching their corruption, but refusing to accept it." She squeezed his hand. "When did you become a philosopher?" "About the time I pulled a half-frozen heiress out of the snow, and my life got complicated." She smiled genuinely this time. "I'm glad it was you in the snow. I'm glad it was you who found me." "Me too." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, hands linked, drawing strength from each other. Tomorrow would bring whatever it brought. But tonight they had this. Two people who'd found each other in the worst circumstances, and somehow made something real out of it. Morning came too soon. They met Aldridge and the 3 witnesses at a busy coffeehouse near the courthouse. Public enough to be safe, private enough to talk. The witnesses were exactly what they claimed. Former executives, middle-aged men with grievances and documentation to back them up. The first, a man named Peterson, had been Victor's chief accountant until he had discovered discrepancies that pointed to embezzlement. When he'd raised concerns, he'd been fired and blacklisted. The second, Chen, had been a partner until Victor had forced him out through legal manipulation and threats against his family. The third, Whitmore, had simply grown disgusted with the corruption and quit, taking detailed records with him. All three were willing to testify. All three wanted to see Victor fall. "Why now?" Garrett asked. "If you've had this information for some time, why come forward now?" Peterson answered. "Because we were afraid. Victor destroys people who oppose him. You've seen it. But when we heard Ava was still alive, still fighting, we realized someone had to stand up. Might as well be us." "How do we know Victor didn't send you?" Ava asked bluntly. "You don't," Whitmore said. "You have to trust your instincts. But think about it. If Victor wanted to trap you, why send 3 people with real evidence? Why not just grab you off the street?" "Because he wants this to look legal," Garrett said. "Wants to destroy you in court publicly so no one questions it. Maybe, or maybe we're exactly what we say we are. People who want to do the right thing before it's too late." Peterson met Ava's eyes. "Your father was a good man. He gave me my first job, believed in me when no one else did. What Victor did to his legacy, to his company, it's wrong, and I'm tired of being afraid." Ava studied them for a long moment, then nodded. "All right, we trust you. But if this is a trap—" "It's not," Chen said quietly. "We're risking everything too. Our careers, our safety, maybe our lives. We wouldn't do that for Victor." The hearing was scheduled for afternoon. They spent the intervening hours at Aldridge's office going over testimony, preparing arguments, trying to anticipate every move Victor's lawyers would make. It felt like preparing for war, which in a sense it was. At the hearing, the courtroom was packed. Reporters filled the gallery. Word had spread that Ava Fairfield was alive and filing suit against her uncle. Half the city's elite had shown up to watch, drawn by scandal and spectacle. And there, at the defendant's table, sat Victor Fairfield. He was smaller than Garrett expected, unremarkable in appearance, just a well-dressed man in his 50s with graying hair and sharp eyes. But when those eyes found Ava, Garrett saw something cold and predatory flash across his face. Victor smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Judge Morrison entered, and everyone stood. She was exactly as Aldridge had described. Severe, intelligent, someone who suffered neither fools nor corruption. She looked over the courtroom with obvious distaste. This is a hearing to determine the mental competency of Ms. Ava Fairfield and to address allegations of financial misconduct by Mr. Victor Fairfield. I will hear opening statements, then witness testimony. I want facts, evidence, and no theatrics. Understood? Both sides acknowledged. Aldridge stood first. His opening was precise, devastating. He laid out Victor's crimes methodically, cited the stolen documents, promised witness testimony that would prove everything. He painted a picture of systematic corruption, of a man who'd used his power to destroy anyone who opposed him, including his own niece. Victor's lead attorney, a man named Stackhouse, countered with character assassination. He portrayed Ava as mentally unstable, delusional, a troubled woman who'd fabricated wild accusations rather than accept her own inadequacy. He cited her disappearance, her months on the run, her theft of private documents as proof of instability. It was ugly and effective. Then the witnesses began. Peterson went first, detailing the financial irregularities he'd discovered. He had documentation, copies of ledgers, transaction records, correspondence. Everything pointed to Victor systematically embezzling from the company he supposedly ran. Stackhouse tried to discredit him, suggested he was a disgruntled employee with an axe to grind. But Peterson held firm, answered every question calmly, never wavered. Chen testified next, describing how Victor had threatened his family when he'd questioned certain business practices. He had letters, recorded conversations, proof of intimidation. Whitmore followed, providing context for the stolen documents, explaining the system of bribes and political manipulation Victor had built. By the time they finished, the courtroom was buzzing. Judge Morrison called for order, her expression unreadable. Then it was Ava's turn. She took the stand with quiet dignity, her hands steady despite what Garrett knew was terror beneath the surface. Aldridge led her through her testimony carefully. Her father's death, Victor's assumption of control, the gradual realization of what he was really doing. "He wanted me to marry Senator Blake," she said clearly. "Not because it was good for me, but because it was good for him. The alliance would have given him tremendous political influence. When I refused, he tried to have me declared incompetent so he could control my inheritance and force the marriage anyway. And when that didn't work," Aldridge prompted, "he had me locked up, told everyone I was ill, brought in doctors he'd paid to diagnose me with whatever he wanted. I escaped with help from a housekeeper who remembered when my father was alive, when the company stood for something other than corruption. What happened then? I ran. For some time I stayed ahead of the men Victor sent after me. Pinkertons, thugs, anyone he could hire. They caught up to me multiple times. The last time, I barely escaped with my life." She described the chase, the storm, how Garrett had found her, explained their plan to expose Victor, the break-in at his office, the murder of Samuel Cross, laid it all out, holding nothing back. The courtroom was silent, riveted. Then Stackhouse stood for cross-examination, and the real fight began. "Miss Fairfield, you admit to breaking into your uncle's private office and stealing confidential documents? I reclaimed evidence of crimes committed using my family's company. That's not theft." A court might disagree. "You also admit to months of erratic behavior, running from authorities, living under false identities, associating with criminals. I was running for my life from men who wanted to kidnap me. Or were you running from the consequences of your own mental instability? From family members trying to help you? If being locked up and forcibly married is help, then yes, I was running from that." Stackhouse smiled coldly. "Let's talk about your companion, Mr. Harlan. How exactly did you meet him?" "He saved my life. How romantic. And what did he get in return? Access to the Fairfield fortune, perhaps. A poor frontiersman, suddenly allied with a wealthy heiress. Quite convenient." Garrett felt rage burn through him, but Ava's expression never changed. "Mr. Harlan asked for nothing, and received nothing, except the danger of helping me. He's here because he believes in doing what's right, which is apparently a foreign concept to you. What's foreign to me is a sane woman stealing documents, jumping out of windows, and making wild accusations against a respected businessman without a shred of—" "Your Honor," Aldridge interrupted, "we've provided substantial documentation proving those accusations." "Documentation obtained illegally," Stackhouse shot back, "which brings us to motive. Miss Fairfield, isn't it true that you stand to inherit a substantial fortune if your uncle is removed as head of Fairfield Industries? I stand to inherit what's rightfully mine, yes. What my father intended me to have before Victor stole it. Or is this entire elaborate scheme simply about money? A disturbed young woman trying to claim a fortune she was deemed unfit to manage? I was deemed unfit by doctors Victor paid, and a process he controlled. This hearing is proving exactly why, because he can't afford for anyone to look too closely at what he's really done. The exchange went on, Stackhouse probing for weaknesses, Ava refusing to break. Garrett watched Victor throughout, saw the man's confidence slowly eroding as his niece dismantled every argument. Finally, Judge Morrison called for closing statements. Aldridge was brief but powerful. Your Honor, the evidence speaks for itself. Victor Fairfield is a criminal who's hidden behind wealth and influence for too long. His niece had the courage to expose him, and now we ask this court to do what's right. Restore her competency, investigate her allegations, and hold a powerful man accountable for his actions. Stackhouse's closing was longer, more theatrical. He painted Ava as troubled, Garrett as an opportunist, the whole case as a money grab, wrapped in righteous indignation. It was persuasive, polished, exactly the kind of performance money could buy. When he finished, Judge Morrison sat back in her chair. "I'll be honest," she said. "This is one of the most disturbing cases I've heard in some time on the bench. The allegations are serious, the evidence is substantial, and the stakes are enormous." She looked at Victor. "Mr. Fairfield, do you wish to make a statement?" Victor stood, and for the first time that day, he spoke directly. "Your Honor, my niece is clearly unwell. I've tried to help her, tried to get her the treatment she needs, but she's refused. These wild accusations, this campaign of character assassination, it's heartbreaking. I love Ava, she's family. All I want is for her to get help." It was perfectly delivered, genuinely concerned. If Garrett hadn't known the truth, he might have believed it. But Ava stood as well. "May I respond, Your Honor?" Judge Morrison nodded. Ava turned to face Victor directly. "You're right about one thing, Uncle. This is heartbreaking. What you did to my father's company, his legacy, his name, all of it breaks my heart. But what breaks it most is that you're still pretending, still lying. Even now, with all the evidence against you, you can't admit what you are. Ava, I'm not finished." Her voice was steel. "You want to help me? Then here's how. Sign over control of Fairfield Industries to an independent board, submit to a full financial audit, and stay away from me for the rest of your life." Victor's mask slipped. Just for a second, Garrett saw rage flash across his features. Then he controlled it, turned to the judge. "Your Honor, I rest my case. My niece clearly needs—" "What I need," Ava interrupted, "is for powerful men to stop deciding what's best for me. I'm not insane. I'm not incompetent. I'm just someone who refused to be controlled, and that's apparently unforgivable." Judge Morrison held up a hand. "Both of you, sit down." They sat. The judge was quiet for a long moment, reviewing documents, thinking. Finally, she spoke. "I'm ruling immediately on the competency issue. Miss Fairfield, I find no evidence whatsoever that you are mentally incompetent. Your previous ruling is hereby overturned. You are restored to full legal capacity." Relief flooded through Garrett. Beside him, Ava closed her eyes briefly. "As for the criminal allegations," Morrison continued, "those are beyond the scope of this hearing. However, based on the evidence presented, I'm ordering a full investigation into Victor Fairfield's business practices. The district attorney's office will receive all relevant documents, and I expect a thorough review." "Your Honor," Stackhouse objected, "you can't. I can and I am. This court is adjourned." The gavel fell. For a moment, nobody moved. Then the courtroom exploded, reporters rushing for doors, spectators talking over each other, Victor's lawyers surrounding him in urgent consultation. Garrett looked at Ava. She was shaking, tears streaming down her face. "We won," she whispered. "We actually won." "Not yet," Aldridge said, appearing beside them. This is just the beginning. The investigation will take some time, maybe longer. Victor's not going down without a fight. But you're free. Legally, you're free. Yes, and that's everything. They left through a side exit, avoiding the press, the crowds, the chaos. Outside, the winter sun was setting, painting the city in shades of gold and shadow. What now? Garrett asked. Before Ava could answer, a figure stepped from the shadows. Ruth Cooper, the woman who had helped them in Philadelphia. Thought I might find you here, she said. Ruth? How did you? Told you. I make it my business to know things, including that you just scored a major victory against Victor Fairfield. She smiled. Congratulations. The documents we gave you, Ava said. Did you really get them to Cross before he died? I did, and he made copies before Victor's men got to him. Those copies are now in the hands of 3 different newspapers, all planning to publish within the week. Your uncle's about to have a very bad time. Why are you telling us this? Because you two need to disappear again. Victor's lost today, but he's not done. He'll come after you harder now, more desperate. You need to be somewhere he can't reach until the investigation concludes, and he's too busy defending himself to worry about revenge. Where would we go? Garrett asked. Ruth handed them an envelope. Train tickets to Montana. There's a ranch there, owned by a friend of mine, remote, safe, and very far from Victor's influence. You can stay there as long as you need. Ava looked at Garrett. Montana. It's not Philadelphia, is it? He said. Not New York. No mansions or society parties. Good. I'm done with all that. She turned to Ruth. Thank you for everything. Thank me by staying alive. And maybe, once this is all over, by doing something good with that fortune of yours. The world could use more people willing to fight for what's right. They left New York that night, slipping out of the city under cover of darkness. No Pinkertons followed. No hired thugs gave chase. For the first time in months, they weren't running. They were choosing their direction. The train carried them west through landscapes that grew progressively wilder and more beautiful. Mountains rose in the distance, promising isolation and peace. What will you do? Ava asked on the 3rd day of travel, after everything settles, after Victor's in prison and the company's sorted out. You could go anywhere, do anything. I was going to ask you the same thing. I asked first. Garrett looked out at the passing scenery. Honestly, I don't know. My old life doesn't fit anymore. I'm not that person, the one who wanted to be alone, who ran from everything. But I don't know who I am instead. Maybe that's okay. Maybe we're both figuring it out. What about you? The company, the fortune, all of it. Do you want it back? She was quiet for a while. I want justice. I want Victor to pay. I want my father's name cleared. But the rest of it, the money, the influence, the responsibility of running an empire, I'm not sure anymore. That life almost killed me. Why would I go back to it? Because it's yours. Because you could do good with it, like Ruth said. Or I could walk away, take enough to be comfortable, and let someone else run Fairfield Industries, someone who actually wants that kind of power. You do that? Just walk away from a fortune? In a heartbeat, if it meant I got to choose my own life for once. She looked at him directly. What if we did it together? Walked away from all of it. Found some quiet place and just lived. No drama, no danger. Just a normal life. With you, I don't think any life would be normal. She smiled. Is that a yes? That's a yes. Montana was everything Ruth had promised. Vast, wild, and beautifully isolated. The ranch sat in a valley surrounded by mountains, with a river running through it, and more sky than Garrett had ever seen in one place. They spent the first weeks just recovering, sleeping late, eating regular meals, not looking over their shoulders every minute. It felt strange, the absence of fear. It took time to trust it. News filtered in slowly. Victor had been indicted on multiple charges: fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy. His political allies had abandoned him overnight, suddenly unable to recall their close association. The Fairfield empire was in chaos, but an independent board had taken control, stabilizing operations. Sometime later, a letter arrived from Aldridge. Victor had been convicted and sentenced to some time in prison. Most of his fortune had been seized to pay restitution. The company was being restructured under new management, and Ava's inheritance had been secured, a staggering amount, enough to fund whatever life she chose. She burned the letter after reading it. "I don't want it," she told Garrett. "Any of it. I want the company to use that money to undo the harm Victor did, pay back the people he cheated, fund the communities he exploited. I'll take enough to buy this ranch. Ruth says her friend is willing to sell, and the rest can go to actually doing some good. You're sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." They bought the ranch that summer. It came with cattle, horses, and a house that needed work but had good bones. They spent months fixing it up, learning how to run the operation, making it theirs. Garrett discovered he liked the work, the physicality of it, the tangible results, the quiet satisfaction of building something real. And he liked doing it with Ava beside him, this woman who'd traded a fortune for freedom and never looked back. She changed, gradually, but noticeably. The fear left her eyes. The tension in her shoulders eased. She learned to laugh again, to sleep through the night without nightmares, to trust that the life they were building wouldn't be torn away. One evening, nearly a year after they'd arrived in Montana, they sat on the porch watching the sunset behind the mountains. The ranch was finally in good shape, fences mended, house repaired, herd thriving. "I was thinking," Ava said, "about what your father told you. That sentiment was a luxury poor men couldn't afford." "What about it?" "I think he was wrong. I think sentiment, caring about people, about doing right, about things that matter more than money, that's not a luxury. That's what makes us human." She looked at him. "You showed me that, in the snow, in Philadelphia, every step of the way. You chose sentiment over safety, over sense, over everything practical, and it saved my life. We saved each other, maybe, but you started it. You stopped when anyone else would have kept writing. Best decision I ever made." She smiled, took his hand. "Mine too." They sat in comfortable silence watching darkness claim the valley. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled. The sound was lonely, but no longer frightening, just part of the landscape, part of this life they'd chosen. "Do you ever miss it?" Garrett asked. "The money, the influence, the world you left behind?" "Never. Not once." She squeezed his hand. "I spent some time being Ava Fairfield, society heiress. I was miserable. Now I'm just Ava, and I've never been happier." "Just Ava," he repeated. "I like that. What about you? Any regrets?" He thought about the cabin in the mountains, his solitary life before she'd stumbled into it. That person felt like a stranger now, someone who'd been surviving, but not living, existing, but not thriving. "No regret," he said. "Everything that happened, everything we went through, it brought us here. That's enough." "More than enough," she agreed. The stars began to appear scattered across the darkening sky. They stayed on the porch until full night had fallen, just being together, just being free. Victor Fairfield had tried to own her, control her, break her. He'd failed, and in failing, he'd given her something unexpected, the chance to discover who she really was beneath all the expectations and obligations, the courage to walk away from everything society said she should want and choose something real instead. Money couldn't buy that. Power couldn't create it. It came from making impossible choices and living with the consequences, from finding someone who'd stand beside you even when standing made no sense, from learning that sometimes the richest life was the one you built with your own hands. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of pine and snow from the mountains. Winter was coming, but they were ready. They had supplies, livestock, each other, everything they needed. Garrett stood, helped Ava to her feet. "We should head inside. Getting cold." In a minute. She looked out at their land, at the life they'd created from nothing. "I just want to remember this, how it feels to be here, to be safe, to be home." "We'll remember," he said. "We've got time now, all the time in the world." They went inside together, closing the door on the cold and the darkness. Inside was warmth, light, the simple comfort of a life well chosen. And somewhere far away in a prison cell, Victor Fairfield paid for his crimes, while the empire he'd built on corruption crumbled to dust. Justice wasn't always swift. It wasn't always clean. But sometimes, if you fought hard enough and refused to give up, it came. And when it did, it was worth every impossible choice, every terrible risk, every moment of fear. Because freedom, real freedom, the kind you earned rather than inherited, that was the only fortune that mattered, the only wealth worth having. And they had it, together.